What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the NFL Weekly. We are officially into the second half of the NFL season, if you can believe it. It is week 10 to be exact. With me, as always, it'll be a double barrel action tonight with me and Raider Jim Martinez. You can find Mr. Martinez at Raider Jim 1090. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing well. As we were just talking, we're a couple Southern California boys, so anything under 70, we're grabbing sweaters and things like that. So we will get through this, though. We'll persevere through the bad weather conditions as Florida's getting hit with its second hurricane within the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, we will deal with the sub 65 weather. And obviously everyone out there in the Gulf and dealing with all that, hopefully all safe and you get through it as best as possible. That's always a tough one. It's always tough in Southern California to complain about the weather. You could probably say you're in the top 10% of the world in terms of that, but we still will complain about it regardless. But it is time to dive into this coming week. But before we do that, we are going to take a look back. I know probably Raider Jim doesn't want to talk too much about it, but our week 9 takeaways from our team or throughout the league, however we want to slice it. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started from week 9 takeaways.
Oh, yeah, I'll blow holes in the Raiders in just a minute here. I think some of the interesting things I saw, though, not even interesting. You see the writing on the wall. And when we talk about the Packers, we have been saying it looks like their dynasty days are now a thing of the past. Rodgers, he stuck around 1 year too many. Maybe he should have been, Roethlisberger's probably watching from the sidelines going, dude, you should have stopped when I did. And to see what's happening to that team, though, and the constant week after week after week, he just goes out and it's everybody else's fault. Mm-hmm. And I understand it. You are the elder statesman. You have earned the right to speak your mind. At the same time, I don't believe that's how you lead. You want to call them out in the locker room behind closed doors, mm-hmm. Great. But to go on national media and use that as your platform, it doesn't endear you to anybody on that Packer sideline. And the other one, we thought we had it pretty much nailed on who are the top 2 teams in the AFC. Well, now you're going to question, is Buffalo, are they questionable now? Now we have Josh Allen's hurt. He's not going to play at least this week, and who knows if he's that's one of those situations, he'll be fine for next week. Well, that's easy for people to say because it's not their elbow. They're not the ones that are hurt, and he's going to go out there and he's going to try to play through it. So I hope that's not a sign of things to come, but let's be honest, they have not been that overwhelming the last 2 games. They've struggled a little bit. So it took 9 weeks, but maybe we're starting to see the real landscape of everything out there. And so as far as the AFC goes, obviously it's Patrick Mahomes and company. They are the guys to beat right now. And on the other side of the ball, as I pass it back over to you, no pun intended, boy, your Eagles are flying high.
Yeah, and that's a big thing. I have, obviously I'm very active on, Instagram, Facebook, social media, things like that. And a lot of it's Eagle related. And I don't want to say I get hate or, there's just a lot of people saying, oh, we have an easy schedule. Well, guess what? Every single year, there is a team that has the easiest schedule in the NFL. They don't go 18-0. And I'm not saying the Eagles are 17-0. I'm not saying that, but they don't start 8-0. It's rare. We saw it last week. I think we still think Buffalo's a good team pending Josh Allen's health. But when Josh Allen's healthy, I think we all expect them to be pretty good. And the Jets kind of exposed them, injury or not. I think it was more than just, oh man, Allen missed that one throw. And, after he got hit, it all went downhill from there. It was from start to finish a very complete game from the Jets. I got to, stick my hand up and say, yeah, I was the one who pretty much was ready to, put the nails in the coffin on the Jets. Doesn't look like that's the case. They're looking like a pretty darn good team. And in terms of Aaron Rodgers, my goodness, Now, we're not political or anything like that, but there was a quote from one of the most infamous political figures ever, Donald Trump. And he was talking, I think, about midterms. And he said, well, if they win, it should be all because of me. And if they lose, it shouldn't have anything to do with me. And first of all, that's so on par with him. That's exactly what you would expect him to say. But that's also pretty much in sports speak what Aaron Rodgers is saying. And in those two worlds, they're kind of very polarizing figures. A lot of reasons not to like those individuals. So I found that kind of funny, and that you picked up on it as well, that it's everyone else's fault when it's going bad. And that's definitely not a leader. And, coach would always say it. And I was told this, when I was younger, that, you coach in private and you praise in public. That's what you do. Now, that doesn't just mean coaches, that means leaders, that means teammates, it means everybody. And I think Aaron Rodgers should probably take that to heart. But yeah, the NFL, even just looking at the games, it seems like you can throw a dart and you're probably going to watch a pretty good game. Might not be clean, but it's going to be a close game. The NFL is so tight, top to bottom. And once again, I still sit here and say, yeah, Eagles are 8-0. But I could sit here and say maybe they're the third or fourth best team in the league, because I don't know if there's enough people talking about the Ravens. The Ravens and Lamar Jackson are putting on a bit of a show, and as quietly as they can, at least nationally. All eyes are on Kansas City and Buffalo in the AFC. Meanwhile, Baltimore may be the most complete team, especially after the pickup who was it? Why am I blanking on the line? Roquan Smith from the Bears. So interesting to see how that goes. But it is now, of course, time to look ahead to week 10. And as Raider Jim mentioned, it's probably time to get a little bit off his chest. However, I will say the football gods are shining on the Raiders, at least with the scheduling of all this. They're in a bit of a stretch where they're struggling big time. Well, they get maybe a team that's in more disarray than them, the Indianapolis Colts, who fire Frank Wright and name interim. No, not the offensive coordinator. No, not the defense. Nope. Jeff Saturday. Yes, the former center. I think even he was surprised to probably get that call, but he is the new head coach, at least for the rest of this season. Looking at the line, you have Indy as the road team. They're plus 215. And the game will be in Vegas. So the Raiders are minus 260. The line sits at 5.5. The over-under is 42.5. We're not starting anywhere else. Raider Jim, the floor is yours.
Okay, if you got small kids nearby, take them out of the room. You don't want to hear what I have to say. No, I'm teasing.
Maybe even teens at this point. I'm expecting some vitriol right now.
What do you say? In 72 hours, the Raiders have released Jonathan Abram. They have put Waller on the injured reserve list. Within the last couple hours, they put Hunter Renfrow on the injured reserve list. It just keeps happening. Let me tell you about this game last week. 17 points, up 17-0. They score 3 points in the second half. And quite honestly, going into halftime, they should have had 24 points, if not 27 points. And that was not anybody's fault but Derek Carr. He had a couple passes that were so poorly thrown. And you know what? After a while, here's the way I see it. I've been in my career for a few decades now. There's just certain parts of my job that I know I have to do. And if I kept going in week after week, month after month, year after year, and they're like, Martinez, you screwed this up again. Oh, yeah, I forgot I'm supposed to do it this way. No, when you have a job to do, you need to know what you're saying. If you can't do it, you shouldn't be there. And I don't know if it's mental or if he really just isn't as consistent as I was hoping he was going to turn out to be this year. It's not going to improve anytime soon. Now he's lost 2 targets. And when he has Devontae Adams out there again, he's not hitting him 100% like he could be and he should be. It's going to be very interesting. And the defense is back to where it's been. If you look at their rating over the last 15, 20 years, they are always in that lower third of the ratings for the entire NFL. I see Indianapolis covering the 5.5. I'll take Indianapolis +6 on this one. It'll go over 42. Buy a half point and go over 42. But disarray as they may be, watch out for Indianapolis because everybody knows what they're up against the Raiders. They lost to Jacksonville. I've got nothing against Jacksonville, but to have them down 17-0 and you don't have the killer instinct to go out there and execute and win the game, no, that's all on the organization.
Yeah, the stat that really jumped out to me, I mean, there are plenty out there. Up until this year, the Raiders franchise, LA, Oakland, all these places, from the entirety of this franchise to this season, they gave up 5 17-point leads. They've given up 3 this season. And that is, I mean, one 17-point loss is bad enough. 3 of them in the middle of this, unfortunate run that they're on. That's got to be incredibly tough. You talked about the loss of those weapons. And I think one of the biggest things that helped Davante Adams and Derek Carr was, okay, well, you got to cover Hunter Renfrow. You got to keep an eye on Darren Waller. Well, now it's kind of, hey, let someone else beat us. Double, triple Davante. And if Derek can find the third string tight end and that's how they beat us, I think the teams will feel good about that. I agree with you. I think Indy covers here. They have a lot of turmoil going on, but I do think in kind of a weird sort of way, there's less pressure on the Colts just because they've kind of already blown it up, right? Like they've fired their coach. They've told Matt Ryan, we don't need you anymore. I don't think there are a whole lot of people in Indianapolis that are expecting a late season playoff run. Not that a ton of people in Vegas are, but they have a lot more to lose. Obviously, Derek Carr, he could lose his job at some point. I don't know if that'll happen, but as you said, I mean, a couple more weeks of him leaving points on the board and then blowing leads, he got to do something. And Josh McDaniels, I would be really interested to see if go back after. I'll vividly remember it was a Monday night game here in San Diego when the Chargers were still here. The Broncos beat the Chargers to take like a 5-6 game lead in that division with 6 games to go. Chargers won out. Broncos lost out. Josh McDaniels was fired at the end of the year. I mean, I'm just ballparking it here. In his last 15 games as a head coach, he's 2-13 in that area. That is not good. I firmly believe there are some coordinators who are really good coordinators, but not great leaders of men, not great just coaches overall to kind of delegate that. Unfortunately, I think that's the case for Josh McDaniel. In terms of the over-under, I do agree with you. 2 really, Indy's defense is average. They're more of kind of that bend but don't break defense. We'll see how that goes. The Raiders, big question, how do they get some passing going, A, with Carr's struggles, and B, losing those weapons. But I do think 42.5 is an attainable number. I do see it being about a 24-21 win one way or the other. I do think the Raiders will win this game, but I don't think they're going to get it done by 6 or 7. So take that to heart. We will stay in the AFC West. One of the bigger spreads we'll be talking about this weekend. It is the Jacksonville Jaguars plus 340 on the money line, heading to Arrowhead to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs are minus 430 on the money line. The spread sits with the Chiefs as 9.5 point favorites, and the over-under here sits at 50.5. Raider Jim, AFC West is your jurisdiction. Take it away.
Well, I'll tell you, last week I had the Titans to keep it tight, play it tight, cover the spread, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That was a game. Let me tell you, what's the difference between a Kansas City Chiefs organization and the Las Vegas Raiders organization? When push comes to shove, the Chiefs shove real hard and they persevere. They find the way to do it. They find the way to get it done. Jacksonville, they are, they have every right to enjoy the victory they got last week, but they're going to find out what it's like to play the top echelon of the AFC West. There's no way that they're going to pull this off. This will not be an upset. There's no weather issues in Kansas City this weekend. Kansas City 9.5. Yeah, I see that. I will take Kansas City to cover the 9.5. And I think they will go over 50 points. I think it's going to be a great game offensively. I just think it's going to be hands down. The Chiefs have a lot more of those points. For Mahomes to go out there and roll up 38 against Jacksonville, not going to surprise me.
Yeah, I see this one in the 31-17, 34-20 range. I do think I've been really impressed with Travis Etienne, not just him not being, the quintessential rookie, but it is his rookie year after missing all last year. But to come off that injury and now be essentially the focal point of that offense, and he needs to be. It's not, oh, hey, it's a great story. It's, hey, Trevor Lawrence is more of a game manager right now. We need someone who can run the rock. And I've been really impressed with him, not only running the ball, but also getting the ball out of the backfield. But at the same time, like Travis Etienne, but he can't do it all here. I like Kansas City as well. If you are feeling maybe a little froggy, maybe buy yourself down a half a point, maybe cover yourself for a push for kind of one of those weird missed extra points or something like that. Should have been a 10-point victory. Someone went for 2 for no reason, blah, 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 something like that. But I do think Kansas City does get the job done here. And as you said, it was, I think Patrick Mahomes is one of the only quarterbacks that is down 14 in the fourth quarter, and you're still going, yeah, but you're still expecting him to pull it out. And that's essentially what we saw. The thing that I've been really impressed with Kansas City really over the last few years is their ability to win different types of games. The Tennessee Kansas City game, I talked about it last week. It's going to be, it was a clash of tempos. Well, guess what? That game was played at the Tennessee tempo that they want to play at. Kansas City still went out and got the job done. I think that's a really nice show for them. 50.5, I think we get over that. 2 at best mediocre defenses with some weapons on both sides of the offense. And I do think it does turn into a bit of a shootout, even if it comes into kind of garbage time shootout. Those points all count the same. Next up, we will stay in the AFC West. It'll be an AFC versus NFC West matchup. Really one of the more interesting games for me this weekend. You have the LA Chargers plus 245. They head up north to take on the San Francisco 49ers, who are minus 300. San Francisco currently 7-point favorites, and the over-under here is 45.5. We stay in the AFC West, so Raider Jim, take it away.
Well, old Jimmy G's just kind of going right along and smiling to himself and not saying too much, but he's doing a really good job out there. You have to hand it to him, and you have to hand it to the 49ers in general. Everybody thought that they might be competitive, but it was going to be the Rams that just controlled everything in the NFC West, and they're just a whole other story that we'll get to a little later down the road. But in this one, the Chargers have pulled out these close wins over the last few weeks, and you got to give it to them. They are pulling it out, but I don't think that's going to be the case this week. I think they're going to get tested. I'm not sure what the weather's going to be in San Francisco. I believe what I saw was they will be clear of rain during the game, and so it should, if anything, it's going to be cool. It's going to be windy, and it's going to be that San Francisco wind. So that's going to go against the kicking game possibly. I like the San Francisco 49ers in this one. I think the Chargers will cover the 7. They might lose by 6, they might lose by 4, but I think they will cover the 7. Over 45, absolutely, all day long over the 45.5.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Niners do probably get this win, but I think this number is a little too much for the Niners. 7 points, even with it being at home. Just not a team that jumps out to me. And the Chargers, as banged up as they've been, and the injury report reads like a novel at sometimes. And they've still been able to, they're 5-3. Yeah, and maybe you look, oh well, this game and that game, and they lost to the Jaguars. Like, I understand that, but this is in the BCS. There is no selection committee. It is your record that gets you into the playoffs, not your strength of schedule. This is a bit of a step up, though. And I think Christian McCaffrey is starting to now really fit in with that offense. And look, it's week 10 and we're still talking about Christian McCaffrey in a positive light, or at least a playing light. Not talking about what is missed with him being injured. So good for him. But I think the Niners at the end, too much, but I agree with you. I think it's about a 3 to 6 point victory that we get this done at. I will stay under here though. I really do like the Niners defense. I think they'll do enough once again to kind of control that tempo, keep it to a 6 to 8 possession game each. And I think that is a little bit better towards the under, because I don't think everyone's going to score on every single drive. It's going to be a really interesting game. Really one of the, not a whole lot of the, quote unquote sexy matchups this weekend, but this is one that definitely caught my eye. But I will take the under. But yeah, San Francisco -7. I'll take the Chargers to maybe cover. And I don't know, if that number gets closer to 300 on the money line for the Chargers, that might be worth a look. That's a high number to move to. But we'll see. I do think the Chargers will put up a good effort, or a better effort than it looks like Vegas expects. So final game in the AFC West. Another one of these really interesting lines, at least in my mind. You got the Denver Broncos +120 at the Tennessee Titans, who are -140. Those money line numbers. Tennessee is 2.5 point favorites, and the over under here, the lowest by far of the weekend, 36.5. Raider Jim, take it away.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out. I was reading something about this game, somebody's preview, and it's one of those situations that you and I talk about. What does these people know that we don't know? For them to act, the writer actually has Denver winning this game outright, but his reasoning being they had a week off. Well, you need more than a week off when you're playing Tennessee. Tennessee's going to come in a bad mood. They took Kansas City to the limit last week. Granted, they lost, but prior to that, they rolled off 5 straight. And I think they're going to pick up right where they left off before they went into Arrowhead, or before they played the Chiefs. And I don't see where Denver and Russell Wilson are going to come out and play any much better than they have been so far this season. So I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee. I'll just stay with the straight line on this one, is -2.5. I think they definitely cover that. And if they win by a field goal, there you go. But I have a feeling they're going to win by more than a field goal. It's going to be interesting to see what Henry does against the linebackers. I got to give it to the Denver defense. They're pretty stout guys, but we'll see what happens with that. I have a feeling, though, Henry's going to have a pretty decent game on this coming weekend. 36.5, I think, is even too low for this, though, because I can see Tennessee getting 24 points. I can see Denver getting 14 to 16 points, something like that. I think that's just too low of a number for me. So I like Tennessee -2.5 and over 36.5.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a low number. 20 to 17 gets you home. That's all you need. And I don't think anyone expects, a ton of scoring, but I think 36.5. This is a line. I feel like every time I put these numbers down, and I have to double take at least 1 or 2 games. And this was one that I was like, what's going on? And I know the quarterback situation in Tennessee isn't great, but it doesn't matter who's taking snaps. 80% of the time you're turning around and wondering, is it my right or left hand that I'm handing the ball off to Derrick Henry? And that's seems like okay to me. I know Denver had the week off, but in that same week, they lost their best defensive player. They traded away Bradley Chubb, and now you're going up. And I know Bradley Chubb's more of a pass rusher, so he's not necessarily, right up there with Derrick Henry, but I'm sure at some point in this game, they would like to have a linebacker like Bradley Chubb to be able to run down or at least corral Derrick Henry. I am all about Tennessee here, -2.5. I would maybe find 1 or 2 other money line games that you feel good about and throw it in a parlay. I think Tennessee -140, -2.5, however you want to slice it. I think Tennessee wins this game handily. I think it's not Andy Reid on the sideline. Andy Reid gets a lot of praise for the bye weeks adjustments. Well, with all due respect, that is not Andy Reid over there. So I think Tennessee gets the job done. I still think Vegas and maybe the bettors are still viewing Tennessee in that early season lens where, yeah, they weren't looking great, but I think they figured it out. They might not be the most exciting team, but they know how to win their way. They almost beat the best team in the AFC by playing their brand of football. I don't think Denver does anything that knocks them out of that. And I mean, the game's in Tennessee. Like, I'm still like, how? Maybe if this game was in Denver at altitude, maybe. But this is, I feel like, too much of like you said, it's a bit of a trap. You kind of look around and wonder if, am I going to pick this up and, like Indiana Jones and the boulder is going to come at me because I fell for it? I'm willing to take that chance. Let's just put it that way. But moving on to an NFC South, AFC North matchup. You got the New Orleans Saints -125 at the Pittsburgh Steelers +110. The Saints are 1.5 point favorites. The over-under sits at 40.5. I'll get this one started. This was another one that I was very surprised with. I think the Saints are a better team. Once again, I know there's a lot of maybe quarterback controversy, quarterback questions, but I think this defense is one of the best. That you don't really say that too often about the Saints. They're always kind of that team that just only give up less than 28, and I think we'll win the game back in the Drew Brees days. This defense is turning it around, and they're playing really well. And also, I think that offensively, at the very least, they've stopped turning the ball over at the clip they were, because they were on a historic clip, and you were wondering, I mean, was this team going to ever go a game without giving up multiple turnovers? And they seem to have figured that out. Pittsburgh, on the other hand, may be the worst team in football. It's really rough over there. Mike Tomlin's going to get his first losing season, and it may cost him his job. I don't know about this one. I know it is in Pittsburgh. The dome team going outdoors, but we're still not at that time of year. Yeah, it's cold for us here, but we're not regionalized. A lot of the guys that played for the Saints, they played in the Big Ten and up north in those environments. Might not be their favorite, but they know how to deal with that. Andy Dalton spent plenty of time in Cincinnati, and you're not going to sit here and tell me that it was sunshine and rainbows for him weather-wise. So I don't really buy into a lot of that, at least in this case. So give me the Saints. I mean, it's essentially a pick 'em, right? At -1.5. I'll take the Saints. I will take the under, though, because obviously, the way I'm looking at this game, I think the Saints dominate defensively. Well, I don't think the Saints offense is going to put up more than 24 points. I don't think Pittsburgh's offense is going to put up more than 10. I got 24-10. That's the under. So that's just how I'm seeing this game going. But another one of these interesting games where I was filling out the line, wondering, what am I missing here? But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Saints heading up to Pittsburgh to face the Steelers.
Buckle up. And to our esteemed colleague who did not join us today, listen closely. In the news the past couple of weeks, what name have we heard in the NBA? Kyrie Irving. And why? Because of his unprofessional, tasteless behavior. And there were demands. People are demanding justice. They want Kyrie to not just apologize, they want to see him punished for his actions. Why isn't there the same outrage for one Alvin Kamara? Thug. He's a thug, I'm telling you. Such thuggery. They have films of him beating up a man in a hotel in Vegas, and yet the Saints don't care. The Saints let him suit up. The Saints let him play. I am making a plea to the leader of the First Off the Bench podcast, and until justice is brought down on he who is Alvin Kamara, I say we no longer speak of the New Orleans Saints on this podcast.
Oh my.
With that, I will say New Orleans, I'll take money line and under 40.
Wow, dropping a bombshell. Somewhere coaches' ears are not only ringing, they're probably bleeding at this moment.
I should have never gone to DC. Ever since, I just, last week I was going to filibuster you at the end.
Yeah, you're getting very very lawyerish over there, lawyerish and politicianish over there. But yeah, it's a tough look, and just to kind of expand on that, and not this is not in the same breath or the same alley that Alvin Kamara is, but what in the world is going on with Michael Thomas? Whether it's fights, I mean, that was like 2 years ago. I feel like that was the last time we expected him to suit up, and now he's essentially down for the rest of the year. I mean, I'm never going to be one to say, are you really hurt or anything like that? But it definitely, I think at the very least, you got to go, wow, you signed that contract and we haven't really seen you since. Not a fantastic look, but yeah, the Alvin Kamara thing, I makes me feel good that the Eagles didn't go out and give up that first round pick to get him. That's for sure. So tough stuff there. We're definitely going to have to, I'm going to have to confer with some individuals, in the quote unquote Supreme Court, and see how that is handled. That's an interesting one there. I'm really, I'm always bummed when coach isn't on, but my goodness, reaction to that would have been worth its weight in gold. But we are going to move on to the Seattle Seahawks plus 130 versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Minus 155. Tampa Bay is -3 in this game, and the over under sits at 44.5. I know this is an international series game. I'm almost positive it's in Germany.
That's correct.
Okay, yes. So it is in Germany. I believe the first game ever, at least NFL wise, in Germany. I know they used to have the Berlin team for the NFL Europe was out there. So they're not, they've had NFL games before in the past, at least NFL Europe, but this will be their first NFL regular season game. Coach, Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors. Yeah, that's what you get. Hey, I'm all blown up. I got a, curveball left and right. I got to put on my judge hat later after this, but Seattle 3-point underdogs as they face the Buccaneers in Germany.
This game 2-3 weeks ago, I would have said absolutely hands down. It's Seattle's game. But I'll tell you what, sign the divorce decrees, get it behind you, and all of a sudden, what does old Tom Terrific do? He comes out and pulls one out last week. Great game by him, great game by Tampa Bay. But this is Seattle, and Seattle is a different animal this year. They're playing in their own zone. I don't think they're reading press. I don't think they're listening to anything. I think they just go out, they're watching films, they're practicing, they're executing. Geno Smith, what do you say about the way this guy's playing week in and week out? The running back who took over for Penny because Penny hurt his ankle, this guy's running like he's supposed to be there, which is, and again, let me do the comparison with the Raiders. Okay, so you have somebody go down. It's the organization's job to make sure you are deep enough that if somebody goes down, you've got somebody else to step in and perform close to, or at least not make you miss that person all that much. And this Seattle is just rolling right now. So yeah, Tampa Bay's the home team, but as we said, they're playing in Germany. I don't know what that time difference is. I think it's another 9-hour thing. I don't know what time the game's on, if it's on. I like Geno Smith. I think Tampa Bay is going to come back down to earth because Seattle's just playing a different level of football right now. So I'm going to take Seattle. I'll take an extra half point and go plus 3.5 on this one, and I think it will go over 44.
Yeah, it is 6:30 a.m. on the West Coast, 9:30 on the East. Yeah, I hope they enjoy themselves. I will not be partaking in that. Have fun, everyone. Maybe the fourth quarter. I'll probably be awake for the fourth quarter. I couldn't tell you what channel it was on. I do know the last international series game I think was on ESPN Plus. So I hate to say it, but I feel like that's kind of a glimpse into our future. The days of Fox and CBS, whatever your local game is, maybe going by the wayside in the next 5 to 10 years. You might have to figure out what streaming service, what game is on, but that's for another day. In terms of this game, there's been a lot of talk about Seattle and how they're defying a lot of people's expectations. But oddly enough, in that same breath, Pete Carroll isn't being brought up as well. This is a guy that, look, I will always be the first one to admit I am incredibly biased. I'm a USC fan, so Pete can do no wrong in my mind. Okay, he resurrected that program and gave me 3, 4, 5 of the best years of college football, at least for me as a fan. And then, when he saw the ship was sinking, he got out of there. And you know what? It was frustrating, but at the same time, I can't imagine I would have done any different. But with that being said, no matter what, it seems like over the last 3 or 4 years, the Seahawks went from a dominating defense to letting Russ cook to now what in the world is going to happen. That's kind of what their thought was coming into this year. And there were a lot of people who were surprised that Geno Smith beat out Drew Lock after they traded for Russell Wilson for him. And Geno Smith is paying it back in spades. He has been so good, very consistent. Once again, I know they don't like to be called game managers, but you brought it up. It was Rashad Penny. Now it's Kenneth Walker III, who's not only doing fantastic things for the Seahawks, but making me look like a genius in my fantasy pick or my fantasy draft. He was my last pick of the draft. I didn't even draft a kicker. I was like, oh, he's still there. I'm going to go get him. Had to sit for a few weeks. Look, we're big San Diego State fans here, and we don't want to see anybody get hurt. Hope Rashad Penny gets back to it because he was, really starting to live up to that first round hype, and he had took that injury. So that was a tough look. But I do think the Seahawks cover this game. I'm right there with you. Plus 3.5. I will buy that 0.5 point. I think the Buccaneers do win this game by a field goal if they do win it. You talked about it last week. The Buccaneers struggles. It hasn't been Tom Brady. He's put some good numbers up. Maybe not the MVP 2017 numbers, but he's put some numbers up that wouldn't make you think he's the reason why. I also said last week that Aaron Rodgers, and Tom Brady, one of these two is going to figure it out or at least get back on track. And we know which one that was now. But this will be an interesting one. Obviously, the Germany situation, it's, I'm not great at geography, but that's probably another 2 or 3 hours, east into Europe. Obviously, I know it's about Central Europe, and England is its own island. So I know that much, but that'll be an interesting thing to look at. The other question about this game, I don't know where the game's being played. Early on in London, there was a lot of struggles with the field because they play soccer. And it's not the cutting. It's kind of a fluid motion the whole game. There are cuts here and there, but not nearly the type of stuff you see from an NFL side of things. See how the field holds up. Won't be enough for me to just completely say this is going to be an under because of that. I do think we see some points, so I will take the over 44.5. Once again, probably won't be waking up early to watch this one. Hopefully catch the fourth quarter. And I think it'll be pretty darn competitive by then. Like I said, if Tampa wins this game, I think it's by a field goal. So give me Seattle plus 3.5, over 44.5 there. Now it's time to deal with Monday Night Football and the only undefeated team in the NFL, no matter what anybody says, bad schedule or not. It is the Washington Commanders, plus 390 on the money line at Philadelphia, minus 510. The Eagles are 11-point favorites, biggest spread we'll talk about this week. And the over-under sits at 43.5. Obviously, I'm going to get this one started. Last week, the Eagles went down. First drive of the game, I felt like before I even turned the TV on, it was 1st and goal for Houston. Raider Jim tried to filibuster me all the way to halftime, but I said nope. But anyways, there were definitely some times where it looked a little murky and there were some mistakes on both sides of the ball from the Eagles. But one constant all year for the Eagles has been the defense and, most importantly, the secondary. Eagles go out, get an interception, and immediately the game changes. They start to take over, and they end up winning the game and getting the job done to remain undefeated against, let's face it, a bad Texans team. Well, here comes the Commanders. Taylor Heineke, Carson Wentz, who knows, probably going to be Heineke. I don't think Carson wants to be on that field on Sunday. Philadelphia's had a rough few weeks outside of the Eagles with their other teams, so Carson might be an easy scapegoat there. 11 for me here. It might be a little too much. I just think in the division, Washington knows them very well. This could be their Super Bowl, and Washington's having an okay year. I'm not writing them off. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but they're not going to be a top 5 picking team. This may be their Super Bowl, their chance that they can hang their hat and say, you know what, we went 7-10, but you know what, we gave the Eagles one of their only losses. We'll see how that goes, but at the same time, talent usually wins out, and I think the Eagles have by far the most talent here. I will take Washington plus 11. I can see the Eagles winning by 10, and guess what? Washington still cashes your ticket right there. In terms of the over-under at 43.5, I'm going to take the over, but I think it's going to be tight. I think that the Eagles defense, they give up their fair share of yards, no doubt about it, especially on the ground. Pierce really kind of pierced them. That pun was intended. And I think they can learn from that. Hopefully the injury to Jordan Davis isn't too bad. That's a tough loss for them. That defensive line that you can kind of continue to rotate in and out and always have fresh bodies. You start losing those bodies, then all of a sudden that complicates things. But I do think the Eagles will win this game. But 11, maybe a little too much. I wouldn't be surprised if they dominate and win by 14. But even when the Eagles have dominated teams, they really haven't covered. And that has been one of my biggest worries. The offense still does leave a lot of points on the board, especially early in the game. But we'll see how it goes. Raider Jim, what are your thoughts? Eagles, Monday night, 11-point favorites. The over-under is 43.5.
I think the Eagle defense, even though it may not be the cream of the crop, I think they are just going to be too stout, too consistent for Washington to really move too much. I like the under on this one. Give me a half a point under 44. Washington, though, they're just not going to have a good game on the road against Philadelphia. But I'm with you, and I would say that they do cover the 11 points. So give me Washington plus 11, under 44.
Yeah, and the one thing, Nick Sirianni brought it up last week, the Eagles, obviously most people know if you go to a game against a Philadelphia team, that city travels well and they're heard. They're loud individuals. And pretty much every game they've played this year, it's been at least 50-50. Obviously, this one, Monday night in Philadelphia against a division rival, that crowd will be rocking. And this is really the first time this season that the entire city of Philadelphia now is fully focused on the Eagles 100% now that the baseball season has ended. That was a tough loss there for the Phillies, but the Eagles are still carrying the torch for Philadelphia. We'll see for how long as they go for 9-0. We'll stay in the NFC East. It's the Dallas Cowboys minus 230 as they head to Lambeau, plus 190. They'll take on the Green Bay Packers. They are plus 190. The Cowboys are 5-point favorites, and the over-under sits at 43. I'll get this one started. NFC East is my jurisdiction. For the last 3 or 4 weeks, whether I'm watching a Padre game or just, anything on Fox, they have been jamming this game down our throat. Like it's the Super Bowl or something, and the rivalry renewed and blah, blah, blah. I don't know. The whole time you're just laughing because we all kind of know what's going on. It's Aaron Rodgers kind of barely trying maybe, or at least, going out there and struggling. And the Cowboys, who a really good defense, but always kind of seem to play down to certain opponents. In this game, we saw last week with Aaron Rodgers. I firmly thought the Detroit game was the get right game for Aaron Rodgers. That's kind of like his old reliable to beat up on. And it didn't happen. And the Cowboys now obviously are in a situation they're chasing the Eagles and the Giants, and they know they're going to have to win probably 10, 12 games to be in playoff contention. This is a big game for both teams. I don't quite know the weather. Obviously, Lambeau, one of the more inhospitable places to go. But once again, we're not in that December where you're, December, early January, where you're just expecting us to set records in Lambeau for the coldest game ever. We're not there yet. But I do think the Dallas wins this game but I think we're looking at a field goal game here. So give me Green Bay +5. In terms of the over under, I actually like the under here. I think two defenses that are better. I think the strength of both of these teams are their defenses. Cowboys, obviously, one of the best, maybe the best defense in all of football. We'll see how Aaron Rodgers deals with that, but I am going to take the under 43. I said weather won't be a factor. It still will be cold, and I'm sure there will still be some uncomfortable situations for quarterbacks and wide receivers of the like there. So that could also keep it under. But Raider Jim, what are your thoughts on the Cowboys favorites as they head to Lambeau?
Boy, you have to go back quite a ways. I think it's 14 years, 15 years since the Packers have lost 5 games in a row, and that's where they're sitting right now. Again, Aaron Rodgers, maybe it's not his fault. Maybe it's not all his fault because he doesn't have that many tools around him with no real passing game to speak of, with no offensive production. They're going to be relying on their 2 running backs to keep them in the game and try to keep it close. And the Dallas run defense is okay. It's not their strong suit, but I'll tell you what, they can get after the quarterback. They can put pressure on the quarterback. And Aaron that's what he's going to end up. If it doesn't happen right away in the second quarter, definitely the second half, they're going to figure that out and they're going to figure out how to get to him. If I'm the defensive coordinator for the Cowboys, boy, I'm showing lots of looks on the other side of the ball. I'm sending people from the left, from the right, and just asking my big bodies up front, push his lineman back into him, get the pressure that way. If you have to create openings so that you can send your edge guys in, or maybe a defensive back, just blitz them every now and then. I think very, very much this is going to be the Dallas game. I'll take Dallas -5 because I think they win by at least 7. And it is, the over-under is tough, but I'm with you. I think it's going to be under. I just don't think Green Bay is going to put points on the board.
Yeah, this is a tough one. Like I said, I think this is a game where if you do watch it, you just kind of sit back, enjoy, and a big fork in the road game. If the Packers lose this game, like you said, 5 losses in a row, and the Vikings maybe don't win this week, but maybe they do, and all of a sudden you're 4 or 5 games back already. And guess what? I believe, yeah, they lost. They already lost 1 game to the Vikings, so they got that tiebreaker. And of course, we're looking way down the road. We're talking about tiebreakers with the Packers. But if at the same time, if somehow, some way they do win this game, and it wouldn't terribly surprise me because, like I said, I do think the Cowboys this season have played down to certain opponents. And this is a dangerous opponent to play down to, because if you give Aaron Rodgers a little bit of hope, and, I think that's the biggest thing right now. He's kind of like a home crowd. You want to get him out of it early and get him to kind of just, all right, let's get this one over with. And, I'll figure out what I'm going to do at the end of the year next week or something like that. But for the Packers, it's a must win. There's no doubt about it. It's not a must cover. It's not a must anything other than they have to win this game or their season will be done. They are not going to be going to the playoffs, which absolutely sounds crazy. Week 10, we're talking about Aaron Rodgers in a must-win game. That just doesn't seem right. But second to last game we're going to be talking about this weekend. It is a NFC West matchup. You have the Arizona Cardinals +105 at the LA Rams -125. The Rams are 1.5 point favorites, and the over-under sits at 41.5. Raider Jim, I'll give you the honors to get us started. What you got?
What do you say about the Rams, the defending Super Bowl champions? This is what a debacle. What a bad season. And they have had some, bad breaks. The defense isn't playing that great. But like you hear, from the Raiders side of the ball, who don't have a chance at anything right now. But when you hear it's one thing after another, something keeps happening to make the season that much longer and that more unattainable if you want to get to the playoffs. So what's the news they get this week? No Matthew Stafford. That's huge. That's real huge. You do have John Wolford, who will step in and take over, and I'm not criticizing that. I mean, that's great. On the other side of the ball, what happens? The Cardinals aren't playing much better. They're also underachieving. You've got 3-6 Cardinals, 3-5 Rams. Kyler Murray, he missed practice this week, so he may be banged up. And so you might be looking at Colt McCoy. This game it's a real head scratcher because you're not sure who's going to want to win. It's almost like that situation where they're playing hot potato. No, you take the ball. You take the ball.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's going to end up being the Rams are going to go down again at let's see, LA Rams at -1.5. Give me Arizona the money line all day long, and I do think there'll be some points on the board even with Stafford out. So I'll go over 41 in this one, but I see the Rams going down again. They should not have lost last week, maybe, or who's to say? You keep waiting for them to have that breakout game. They're the defending Super Bowl champions, and they're just not. There's not that defensive intimidation like there was the last couple years before this.
Yeah, there is zero, I feel like, intimidation on either side of the ball. Obviously Von Miller and Odell Beckham, maybe not the whole reason why, but my goodness, that was a big two pieces that were taken away, and they're showing this is kind of like the underachievable because both of these teams, they've done that. If you would have told me at the beginning of the year, we're talking week 10, Arizona at LA, I'd be saying this is probably the best game of the weekend. This is who's going to take control of the NFC West. Maybe not so much. Who's gonna take control of third place in the NFC West, it turns out, in this one. Interesting. And a lot of times I talk about this, it's tongue in cheek, but it's starting to line up to be more of set it in stone. But look, Kyler Murray's 0-2 since the latest Call of Duty game came out. I'm just putting it out there. There are a lot of numbers out there that talk about it. We saw in his contract, there was some specific wording in terms of his video game habits and things like that. So once again, I kind of say it half jokingly, but also, I mean, hey, at some point, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck. That's probably a duck. But at the same time, the John Wolford / Colt McCoy Bowl, it reminds me a lot of the 2020 season, where the NFL was the only season to really go the whole way, but there were a lot of weeks where you were picking up guys Wednesday to get slotted in to play, not to be on to play meaningful games. I kind of how it feels here. Interesting on this one, but I'm with you. I'll take the Cardinals. Probably going to take the money line at this point. You might as well. It's a pick 'em. In terms of the over under 41.5. I know these offenses have struggled. I know we might be looking at two backup quarterbacks, but I do think this is still too low of a number for these offenses. Still a lot of firepower out there. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, give me Arizona money line under the 41.5. Final game of the weekend we'll be talking about. It is really one of the better games as well, even with the Josh Allen situation, but it is Minnesota plus 150 as they head to Buffalo, who is minus 180. The Bills are 3.5 point favorites, and the over under sits at 43.5. Raider Jim, what are you thinking?
I think we always say that when you see that -3 for the home team, that's the automatic, that's the gimme, the -3. So in essence, they're thinking they're half a point money line pick against the Minnesota Vikings. One key factor in this is there's a good chance it could snow in Buffalo. That's going to affect the passing game. Now, what else affects the passing game for the Bills? Josh Allen's out, so they get Case Keenum under center, which kind of like it lessens what Stephon. Oh hell no, I got the last name. Diggs, yeah. What Diggs is going to be able to do? Maybe not. He still has to deal with Patrick Peterson, who's a pretty darn good cover guy back there. I think this is going to be a very, very good game. One of the things I don't like is Vikings are the second best team in the NFC right now, second to your Philadelphia Phillies. And as you said, big deal, you guys are undefeated. Big deal, you guys got a bad schedule or an easy schedule. It's a cakewalk for you guys. Well, you know what? Then why isn't your team winning too? I mean, then you go out and win 8 games. Same can be said in a sense for the Minnesota Vikings. They're not a pretty team. There's nothing exciting about them. They are statistically, they're not attractive. They're not burning it up anywhere really, but they're playing consistent. They've only lost once. And I think by virtue of the way the Buffalo offense has produced the last couple of weeks, I really see this one. I will take Minnesota +4 on the road, and I'm going to go under 44 on this one, crossing, thinking that the weather will play a factor.
Yeah, I agree with you on both of those. I think this is a very winnable game for Minnesota. I think they have a really good shot of winning, but I definitely think they cover. Case Keenum, you can do a lot worse. We just talked about John Wolford and Colt McCoy. You can do a lot worse than Case Keenum as your backup quarterback. I guess my big question, and it's not like they run the read option a ton, but Josh Allen more athletic. You just wonder if maybe they have to change some things in the game plan side of things for Case Keenum. But I have in my notes, the Vikings are a bunch of big uglies. And that's kind of exactly what you said. They're not going to win a beauty pageant. They're not going to look as attractive as Buffalo and Baltimore and even the Eagles, with all their, kind of flash here and there. But I tell you what, when it's down and it's time to get the job done, and it's that quote unquote witching hour, if you watch the Red Zone, they're more often than not going to come up on the better side of things. They've had a lot of games where they've had to come from behind late against lesser competition, much to your point of a lot of people kind of poking holes in that. Well, guess what? There are a lot of teams that almost get there, almost come back, and then still lose. Vikings have been being very, very consistent. And like you said, it reminds me a lot of like the Titans. They're just going to go out and play their brand of football. And more often than not, that's going to be enough to get the job done. We see a lot of times late in the season, these flashy, nice teams. Well, guess what? You're going to have to go probably back east in February. You probably need a little bit of grit in you. And I think the Vikings have plenty of that. I will take Minnesota +3.5, may even flirt with the money line at +150. And then under 43.5 with that forecast of possible snow. But Raider Jim, final thoughts for week 10 edition of the NFL Weekly.
Yeah, final thoughts, and not really anything to do with the NFL. I will tell you, last week, folks, as we wrap this up, my esteemed colleague and somebody I have a lot of respect for made his opinion known about how important it is to get out and vote. And I really respected and appreciated that he would take the time to do so. And the reason we can vote is because a lot of people have done a lot of things to give us that right. Tomorrow when we wake up, it's going to be Veterans Day. I'll be thinking of my son-in-law who just started his 22nd year in the U.S. Navy.
Wow.
He spent the last 3 years on the deck of the Reagan sending jets on and off and on and off and on and off. He has permanent tinnitus in one ear. He's got a couple bad knees because of the work that he does inside of helicopters and keeping them wired and up in the air. And then I think of my dad, who at age 17, at the end of World War II, was on the USS Jason, and they were going around the South Pacific recovering bodies of the fallen troops. Age 17. Age 17, I was trying to not get thrown out of high school. And then just a couple weeks ago, I walked the grounds of the Arlington Cemetery, and a man I never met. I found my grandfather's grave. My grandfather, Gabino Canizato Ray, was the valet and chef for Franklin Roosevelt on the last presidential yacht that the United States had. And I was so very proud to be able to kneel at his headstone and thank him. So for all the veterans, enlisted, past, the ones who will sign up in the future, thank you so much. Because of your efforts and all you have done and given us, we get to vote. You get to ride in the streets if you don't like what's going on. We get to sit here and talk silliness about football, but don't ever think in my heart that I don't recognize and am very proud of all that you've done. Thank you very much for your service.
Amen. I could not have said it any better. I will just echo what Raider Jim said. Obviously, November 11th is Veterans Day. But for me, it's kind of like with Veterans Day and Memorial Day. It's not that one day. Now, obviously, this is the day we come together and, maybe you get the day off or this or that, but 365 days a year, we need to be grateful for our men and women who are in the armed services. And I think that's great that you brought up, unfortunately, the tinnitus in the ear and the knees starting to go. It's not always sacrifices on the battlefield. It's sacrifices day in and day out, grinding to do things that I don't even know that goes on or this goes on. And it goes largely unrecognized. And obviously Veterans Day is the day that we do recognize those, but I really do hope that every single day we take a moment to thank our veterans, say a prayer or just be grateful that we live in a country that has people that are willing to. The Raider Jim's son has never met me, but he would be willing to put his life on the line for my freedom. I don't know what else you need to say about an individual and all those individuals. So my grandfather served as well. And I tell you what, I won't make it up tomorrow because it's always a little too crazy for me with crowds, but one of my favorite places in San Diego to go is Fort Rosecrans National Cemetery. And I tell you what, if you're in the San Diego area and you've never been to Fort Rosecrans, it is a humbling experience to see how beautiful that is, but to see all the gravestones of the men and women who served. It's really, really is humbling. And obviously, November 11th is Veterans Day, but let's just make sure that 365 days a year, we stay grateful for what those men and women have done. So
Absolutely.
Thank you all so much for listening to this edition of the NFL Weekly presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. It's time for y'all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon and take care.
Peace out.